Picture this. You're standing on a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The nearest land is over 2,000 miles away. You look around and see nearly 900 giant stone heads staring back at you. Some are as tall as a 4-story building. They weigh more than a school bus. And here's the crazy part. They're scattered all over the island like someone just moved them there. But wait, it gets weirder. These statues were carved from a single quarry on one side of the island. Yet somehow they ended up miles away. How? The people who built them had no wheels, no cranes, no machines. Just their hands, some ropes, and apparently, magic? For centuries, this mystery has stumped everyone. Archaeologists, engineers, even NASA scientists have tried to figure it out. The locals have a saying, the statues walked. Sounds crazy, right? But what if they weren't joking? Today, we're going to solve one of the world's greatest mysteries. We'll uncover the lost technology that moved 900 giant statues across an island. And I promise you, the truth is more incredible than any alien theory you've ever heard. Stick around, because in the next few minutes, your mind is going to be blown. Let's dive into the mystery of Easter Island. Let's start with the basics. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as the locals call it, is literally the most isolated inhabited island on Earth. It's a tiny triangle of land sitting in the Pacific Ocean, about as far from civilization as you can get without leaving the planet. The island is home to nearly 900 giant stone statues called Moai. These aren't just big rocks. They're masterpieces. Each one is unique, with different facial features, expressions, and sizes. The biggest ones are almost 40 feet tall and weigh around 80 tons. That's like trying to move 16 elephants stacked on top of each other. Now here's where it gets interesting. All these statues were carved at a place called Reino Raraku, which is basically a quarry on the slopes of an extinct volcano. But here's the thing. Most of the statues aren't at the quarry. They're scattered all over the island, some of them 11 miles away from where they were born. When European explorers first arrived in 1722, they were completely baffled. How did these massive stone giants get from point A to point B? The island had no trees big enough to roll them on. No animals strong enough to pull them. And definitely no advanced machinery. The mystery got even deeper when archaeologists started studying the statues. They found that almost all of them were facing inland, watching over the villages and farmland. It was like they were guardians, protecting the people. But the ones still at the quarry? They were facing outward, toward the ocean. For decades, experts came up with wild theories. Some said aliens must have helped. Others thought there was some lost ancient technology. The most popular theory was that the islanders used wooden rollers to roll the statues across the island. But there was a problem. The island didn't have enough big trees to make that work. Then there were the ropes. Archaeologists found evidence of sophisticated rope making on the island. The Rapa Nui people were masters at making strong ropes from local plants. But how do you use ropes to move something that weighs as much as a house? The local people had their own explanation, passed down through generations. They said the statues walked. Not literally, of course, but that's how it looked to them. The statues somehow moved across the island under their own power, swaying back and forth as they traveled. Most scientists dismissed this as folklore. After all, stones don't walk. But a few curious researchers started to wonder, what if the locals were describing something real? What if walking was actually a clue to how the statues were really moved? The breakthrough came when researchers started looking at the statues themselves more carefully. They noticed something odd. The statues that were moved had different proportions than the ones that stayed at the quarry. The moved statues had bigger heads, more forward-leaning postures, and different centers of gravity. It was like they were designed to be moved. But how? Drop a comment below. What's your theory on how they moved the statues? Let's see who can guess the answer before we reveal it. Everything changed in 2012 when a team of crazy scientists decided to do something nobody had tried before. They built their own Moai statue and tried to make it walk. The team was led by archaeologists Carl Lippo and Terry Hunt, along with National Geographic. They weren't just guessing. They had studied the statues for years and noticed something everyone else had missed. The statues weren't just randomly shaped. They were engineered. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to move a refrigerator. You'd probably tip it back and rock it from side to side, right? That's basically what the Rapa Nui people figured out, but with a 14-ton stone statue. The scientists created a 10-foot-tall replica weighing 5 tons. It was made from concrete, but it had the exact same proportions as the original statues. The key was in the design. The statue had a forward-leaning posture and a D-shaped base, kind of like a rocking chair. Then came the magic moment. They attached 3 ropes to the statue, 1 to the head and 2 to the sides. With just 18 people pulling the ropes in a specific rhythm, something incredible happened. The statue began to rock back and forth, and then, it walked. It literally walked across the field, swaying from side to side like a penguin. The rope pullers had to work together in perfect harmony, left, right, and the statue would walk forward step by step. The locals who watched the experiment were amazed. They said it looked exactly like their ancestors had described. The statues walking across the island. But here's the really cool part. This method explained so many mysteries. Why were the moved statues shaped differently from the ones at the quarry? Because they were designed to walk. Why did some statues have different proportions? Because the statue makers were constantly improving their walking design. It also explained why so many statues were found along the ancient roads of Easter Island. When archaeologists mapped out where the statues were located, they found that most of them were along what looked like ancient pathways. These weren't random locations. They were rest stops along the walking routes. The walking method had another huge advantage. It was incredibly efficient. You didn't need to build massive ramps or cut down forests. You just needed ropes and people who knew how to work together. And the Rapa Nui people were masters of both. But the experiment also revealed something sad. Moving a statue this way required incredible teamwork and precise timing. If people stopped working together, the statue would fall and break. This might explain why so many statues are found lying on their sides along the roads. They were casualties of a society that was falling apart. The walking theory also explained why the statues at the quarry were facing outward. They were like a production line, facing the direction they would walk. Once they were completed and ready to move, they would begin their journey across the island to their final destinations. This discovery changed everything we thought we knew about Easter Island. The Rapa Nui people weren't just skilled artists. They were brilliant engineers who solved an impossible problem with nothing but human ingenuity. What do you think about the walking statues theory? Does it make sense to you, or do you think there's more to the story? Let us know in the comments. Now that we know the statues could walk, let's dig into the incredible engineering that made it possible. Because moving a 14-ton statue isn't just about having a good idea. It's about solving 1,000 tiny problems that could go wrong. First, let's talk about the ropes. The Rapa Nui people didn't have access to modern materials, so they had to get creative. They used plants like mahut, which is a type of paper mulberry tree, and hau, which is a hibiscus plant. These plants have incredibly strong fibers that can be woven into ropes capable of supporting massive weights. But making the rope was just the beginning. The real genius was in understanding physics. The statue walkers had to figure out the perfect center of gravity. Too far forward, and the statue would tip over and smash. Too far back, and it wouldn't rock at all. The shape of the statues wasn't random. It was calculated. The D-shaped base acted like a rocking chair, allowing the statue to tilt from side to side. The forward-leaning posture helped with momentum. Even the angle of the head was important for balance. Think of it like riding a bicycle. When you're learning to ride, you have to find that perfect balance point where you're not falling over but you're also not standing still. The statue makers found that same balance point, but with tons of stone. The rope placement was crucial too. The scientists found that you needed exactly 3 ropes, 1 attached to the head and 2 to the sides. If you used more ropes, people would get in each other's way. If you used fewer, you couldn't control the statue properly. But here's where it gets really impressive. The teamwork required was incredible. The rope pullers had to work in perfect synchronization. The head rope team would pull to rock the statue forward, then the side rope teams would alternate, left, right, to make it walk. It was like a giant dance, with 15 to 20 people all moving in rhythm. One person would act as the conductor, calling out the timing. If even one person was off beat, the whole thing would fall apart. The ancient roads of Easter Island tell us even more about this engineering marvel. These weren't just random paths. They were carefully planned routes with specific slopes and surfaces. The statue movers had to think about terrain, weather, and rest stops. Some of the roads have gentle slopes that would help the statues walk downhill. Others have flat areas where teams could rest and reorganize. The routes avoided areas with loose rocks or steep drops where a statue might fall and break. The scientists also discovered that different-sized statues required different techniques. Smaller statues needed smaller teams but were harder to get started. Larger statues needed more people but had more momentum once they got going. There's evidence that the Rapa Nui people were constantly improving their methods. Early statues have different proportions than later ones, suggesting they were experimenting and learning. Some statues have special features like carved petroglyphs that might have been alignment markers to help with rope placement. The whole system was so sophisticated that it required detailed knowledge passed down through generations. Master statue movers would have trained apprentices in the art of rope work, timing, and teamwork. It was like a specialized trade that took years to master. But perhaps the most impressive part was the problem-solving. What do you do when a statue gets stuck? How do you move it around corners? What happens if the weather changes? The Rapa Nui people had to figure out solutions to all these challenges. Archaeological evidence suggests they had repair techniques for broken statues, backup plans for difficult terrain, and even methods for moving statues uphill. They weren't just following a simple formula. They were master engineers adapting to every situation. This level of engineering is mind-blowing. What other ancient mysteries do you think could be solved with modern experiments? Share your thoughts below. So we've solved the mystery of how the statues moved, but there's still a bigger question. Why? Why did the Rapa Nui people spend so much time and energy moving these massive statues around their island? The answer takes us deep into the culture and beliefs of one of the world's most isolated societies. The Moai weren't just art. They were ancestors. Each statue represented a specific person, usually a chief or important leader who had died. The Rapa Nui people believed these ancestor spirits watched over and protected their families and villages. This explains why most of the statues face inland, looking over the communities. They weren't just decoration. They were guardians. Having your ancestor's statue watching over your land was like having a supernatural security system. But moving the statues was about more than just religion. It was about politics, economics, and social power. Building and moving a moai was a massive community project that required cooperation between different families and clans. The bigger and more elaborate your statue, the more important your family was considered. Think of it like building a cathedral in medieval Europe. It wasn't just about worship. It was about showing off wealth, power, and the ability to organize huge projects. The statue-moving ceremonies were probably major social events that brought the whole community together. The walking method also reveals something beautiful about Rapa Nui culture. Moving a statue required perfect teamwork. Nobody could do it alone. Everyone had to work together, following the same rhythm, trusting each other completely. It was a physical representation of how their society was supposed to work. But this also explains why the statue-moving tradition eventually stopped. Easter Island went through a period of social collapse around 1600 AD. The population declined, different groups started fighting each other, and the cooperation needed for statue walking broke down. Many statues were left abandoned along the roads, never reaching their final destinations. Some were toppled during conflicts between rival clans. The knowledge of how to move them was gradually lost as the master statue movers died without passing on their skills. When European explorers arrived in 1722, they found a society that had largely forgotten how their ancestors had accomplished these incredible feats. The walking statues had become just a legend, a story told by grandparents to children. But the legend persisted for a reason. The Rapa Nui people knew their ancestors had done something amazing. They remembered that the statues had somehow moved across the island, even if they'd forgotten exactly how. Modern science has now confirmed what the oral tradition always claimed: the statues really did walk. It's a perfect example of how traditional knowledge and modern research can work together to solve ancient mysteries. The discovery also changes how we think about prehistoric technology. We often assume that ancient people couldn't accomplish complex tasks without modern tools. But the Rapa Nui people prove that human ingenuity, teamwork, and understanding of physics can overcome almost any challenge. The walking statues of Easter Island represent one of humanity's greatest achievements, not because of the technology involved, but because of the cooperation, creativity, and sheer determination it took to make it work. Today, the Moai still stand on Easter Island, silent witnesses to an incredible feat of engineering. They remind us that our ancestors were just as smart and creative as we are. They just had different tools to work with. The mystery of how the statues moved has been solved, but the real mystery, how a small island society created something so amazing, will continue to inspire us forever. What's your biggest takeaway from this incredible story? Do you think there are other impossible ancient achievements that we've underestimated? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And there you have it, the mystery that stumped the world for centuries, finally solved. The Moai statues of Easter Island didn't need aliens, advanced technology, or magic. They just needed human ingenuity, teamwork, and a deep understanding of physics. The walking statues theory shows us that our ancestors were incredibly smart. They solved problems we thought were impossible using nothing but rope, cooperation, and brilliant engineering. It's a reminder that human creativity has no limits when people work together. But this story also has a deeper message. The Rapa Nui people accomplished something amazing when their society was united and working together. When that cooperation broke down, the statues stopped walking. It's a lesson about what we can achieve when we collaborate, and what we lose when we don't. The mystery of Easter Island has captivated people for generations, and now we know why. It's not just about moving stones. It's about the power of human cooperation and the incredible things we can accomplish when we put our minds together. If you enjoyed uncovering this ancient mystery, you'll love our other videos about lost civilizations and forgotten technologies. Click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new discovery. We're always digging up incredible stories from the past that change how we see the world. Next week, we're exploring another mind-blowing mystery: how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids without modern machinery. Trust me, you won't want to miss that one. What ancient mystery should we investigate next? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. And if this video blew your mind, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves history as much as you do. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the truth is often more amazing than any fiction we can imagine. See you in the next video.